Marcus Reed pushed his cleaning cart down the long metal hallway of the massive alien ship called Stellar Dominion. The sound of his wheels rolling on the polished floor was the only noise he made as he moved through the corridors like a shadow. 3 years he had been working on this ship, and 3 years the aliens had barely looked at him twice. The ship was enormous beyond human imagination, with thousands of rooms and corridors stretching in every direction. It housed the most powerful military force in the galaxy, with creatures from dozens of different worlds, all working together under one command. The Vortex stood 9 feet tall, with bodies made of living crystal that reflected light in rainbow patterns. Their voices sounded like breaking glass when they spoke, and their movements were sharp and precise like cutting tools. The Funari looked like giant insects with 6 arms and compound eyes that could see in multiple directions at once. They moved in quick, jerky motions and made clicking sounds when they talked to each other. Their exoskeletons were black and shiny and covered in strange markings that showed their rank and position. The Nebulans were the strangest of all, because they had no solid form at all. They were clouds of glowing gas that floated in special containment suits shaped like humanoid bodies. When they spoke, their voices came from speakers built into their suits and sounded like wind whistling through caves. All these alien species looked down on humans as primitive creatures, barely smart enough to do simple tasks, Marcus had learned this lesson well in his first weeks aboard the ship when he tried to be friendly and helpful. The aliens either ignored him completely or spoke to him like he was a pet that had learned a few tricks. Now he kept his head down and did his work without complaint. He cleaned the floors and emptied the trash and fixed broken equipment when asked. The aliens had stopped noticing him completely, which was exactly what Marcus wanted. He had become invisible, and invisible was safe. Every morning Marcus started his rounds in the lower decks where the engine rooms hummed with power that could destroy entire planets. The Threnari engineers worked there, adjusting massive machines that Marcus pretended not to understand. They spoke in their clicking language about power output and fuel consumption and maintenance schedules while Marcus cleaned around their feet. He moved through the weapons bays where rows of energy cannons lined the walls like sleeping dragons. The Vorthic weapons officers ran diagnostic tests and discussed firing patterns and target acquisition systems. They never noticed Marcus wiping down the cannon barrels or sweeping the ammunition storage areas. The medical bay was run by Nebulans who floated between patients treating injuries and illnesses that affected different alien biologies. Marcus cleaned their instruments and disposed of medical waste while listening to conversations about crew health and combat readiness. The gaseous aliens sometimes forgot he was there and discussed classified medical files within his hearing, but the most interesting place was the bridge where Admiral Corvan commanded the entire ship. The bridge was a massive circular room with dozens of control stations and viewing screens showing the stars outside. Officers from all 3 species worked together monitoring communications and navigation and weapon systems. Marcus cleaned the bridge every day during the quiet hours when most of the senior staff were resting. He polished the control panels and vacuumed the floors and organized the data tablets that officers left scattered around their stations. While he worked, he listened to recorded conversations and read reports that were left open on computer screens. The aliens never thought to secure their information when the human janitor was around. Why would they worry about a creature too stupid to understand their advanced technology and military tactics? Marcus had learned to read their languages and understand their computer systems, but he never let them know this. Admiral Corvan was a Vorthic warrior who had earned his position through centuries of combat and leadership. His crystalline body was scarred from countless battles, and his voice carried the authority of absolute command. When he spoke, other officers listened with complete attention and followed his orders without question. The Admiral ran his ship with military precision and expected perfection from every member of his crew. He held briefings every day where he discussed mission objectives and tactical plans and crew assignments. Marcus cleaned the briefing room before and after these meetings and sometimes hid in storage closets to listen to the discussions. The ship was part of a massive fleet that patrolled the outer regions of known space. Their mission was to protect the civilized worlds from pirates and raiders and other threats that came from the darkness beyond the galaxy. The Galactic Council had assembled this fleet from the best ships and crews of dozens of different species, but Marcus knew there were secrets aboard this ship that went deeper than routine patrol missions. He had overheard conversations about special operations and classified experiments and weapons that were too dangerous to use except in the most desperate situations. The aliens thought they were safe discussing these matters in front of the harmless human janitor. During his 3 years aboard the ship, Marcus had developed a routine that kept him invisible and safe. He woke before the aliens started their day and began cleaning in areas where he would not be disturbed. He ate simple meals in the human quarters where a few dozen other human workers lived in conditions that were basic but adequate, the other humans aboard. The ship were mostly maintenance workers and food service staff who had been hired because human labor was cheap and humans could work in conditions that were uncomfortable for other species. They were grateful for the jobs and the chance to see the galaxy. Even if they were treated as second-class citizens, Marcus kept to himself and did not socialize with the other humans. He claimed to be a refugee from a destroyed colony who was just trying to make an honest living. The story was believable because there were many such refugees, scattered across the galaxy after various disasters and conflicts, but Marcus Red was not what he appeared to be, and his true purpose aboard the Stellar Dominion was far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. He continued his daily routine of cleaning and listening and learning while keeping his real identity hidden beneath the disguise of a simple human janitor who wanted nothing more than to stay invisible and safe. Admiral Corvan had commanded the Stellar Dominion for 15 years, and in that time he had developed an eye for details that others missed. His crystal body absorbed and processed information from multiple sources at once, and his military training had taught him to notice patterns and irregularities that could mean the difference between victory and defeat. On this particular morning, the Admiral was conducting his weekly inspection of the ship's critical systems. He moved through the corridors with his usual measured pace while his aide, Captain Theron, followed behind taking notes on a data tablet. The inspection was routine but important because small problems could become major disasters if left unchecked. They entered the Strategic Planning Center where the ship's most sensitive operations were coordinated. The room contained classified star charts and tactical displays and communication equipment that connected directly to Galactic Council headquarters. Access to this area was restricted to senior officers with the highest security clearance. Marcus was cleaning the floor near the main tactical display when the Admiral entered. He immediately moved to one side and kept his head down as he had learned to do when senior officers were present. The Admiral barely glanced at him as he began his inspection of the equipment and security protocols, but as Marcus bent over to clean under a console, the collar of his uniform shifted slightly and Admiral Corvan caught a glimpse of something that made him pause. There were marks on the human's neck just below the hairline. Small, precise scars that formed a pattern too deliberate to be accidental. The Admiral had seen similar markings before on soldiers who had undergone certain types of military procedures. Biometric implants and rank designations were sometimes surgically embedded in the necks of Special Forces operatives. When those implants were removed, they left distinctive scar patterns that experienced military officers could recognize. Admiral Corvan continued his inspection without changing his expression, but his mind was now focused on the human janitor. He observed Marcus's movements more carefully and noticed things that had been hidden in plain sight. The human moved with efficiency and awareness that suggested training beyond simple custodial work. Marcus cleaned around the sensitive equipment with practiced precision, never accidentally bumping into controls or displays. His eyes scanned the room, constantly taking in details and exit routes in a way that spoke of tactical awareness. When other officers entered the room, Marcus positioned himself to maintain clear sight lines while appearing to focus on his cleaning tasks. The Admiral finished his inspection and left the Strategic Planning Center, but his thoughts remained on the mysterious scars he had glimpsed. He returned to his private office and activated his personal computer terminal using security codes that only he knew. The ship's database contained detailed files on every crew member, including the human workers. Marcus Reed's file showed him. As a refugee from the colony world of New Haven, which had been destroyed in a pirate raid 3 years ago, he had applied for work aboard the Stellar Dominion and passed basic background checks that confirmed his identity and work history. The file included medical records showing various minor injuries consistent with manual labor and colony life, but Admiral Corvin's trained eye noticed inconsistencies that the original screening process had missed. The timeline of Marcus's life showed gaps that were not fully explained. His work history before the colony's destruction was vague and lacked the detailed records that most civilized worlds maintained on their citizens. The Admiral accessed classified databases that contained information about human, military forces, and special operations units. Most alien species knew little about human military capabilities because humans were considered a minor species with limited technology and resources. But Admiral Corvin had fought alongside human mercenaries in border conflicts and knew they were more capable than their reputation suggested. He found references to something called the Terran Special Operations Command and a unit known as the Ghost Division. The information was fragmentary because human military secrets were well protected, but the Admiral learned that Ghost Division operatives were trained in deep cover infiltration and intelligence gathering. The description of their training and capabilities matched what Admiral Corvin had observed in Marcus's behavior. The surgical scars on his neck could have come from the removal of military implants when he assumed his civilian cover identity. His background story as a refugee would provide perfect cover for a deep undercover operative. Admiral Corvin spent the next several days observing Marcus more carefully while maintaining his normal routine. He watched how the human moved through the ship and noticed that Marcus had access to areas and information that could be valuable to enemy intelligence services. The janitor cleaned the bridge during quiet hours when classified communications were often left unattended. Marcus serviced the weapons bays and engine rooms where technical specifications and capabilities were openly discussed. He worked in the medical bay where crew health and readiness reports were processed. His duties gave him unprecedented access to the ship's most sensitive areas and information, but the Admiral also noticed that Marcus had never been caught stealing information or sabotaging equipment. Security monitors showed him doing exactly what a janitor should do and nothing more. If he was gathering intelligence, he was doing it through observation and memory rather than through theft or technological espionage. The Admiral faced a difficult decision about how to handle his suspicions. If Marcus was indeed a spy, then exposing him could create a diplomatic incident between the Galactic Council and the human government. But if he was gathering intelligence on Council military capabilities, then he posed a potential security threat. That could not be ignored. Admiral Corvin decided to test his theory by setting up a situation where Marcus would be exposed to false information. He arranged for a fake tactical briefing to be left on a computer terminal in the Strategic Planning Center while Marcus was cleaning nearby. The briefing contained plausible but incorrect information about fleet movements and weapons capabilities. Marcus cleaned the area as usual and showed no obvious signs of paying attention to the computer screen. But Admiral Corvin's enhanced senses detected subtle changes in the human's breathing and posture that suggested he was indeed reading and memorizing the information. The test confirmed the Admiral's suspicions about Marcus's true nature. The next phase of Admiral Corvin's investigation involved monitoring Marcus's activities more closely without alerting him to the surveillance. The Admiral used his command authority to access security recordings and communication logs that might reveal how Marcus was transmitting any intelligence he gathered, but the surveillance revealed something unexpected. Marcus was not communicating with anyone outside the ship through normal channels. His personal communications were limited to brief messages to other human workers about scheduling and supplies. If he was sending intelligence reports, he was using methods that the ship's security systems could not detect. Admiral Corvin realized that Marcus might be conducting a long-term intelligence gathering operation where information was stored and transmitted through methods that would not be discovered until he left the ship. The Admiral's respect for the humans' operational security grew even as his concern about the security implications increased. The time had come for a direct confrontation, but Admiral Corvin knew it would have to be handled carefully. Marcus had maintained his cover for 3 years without making any mistakes that would expose him to normal security procedures. Approaching him directly would require skill and strategy worthy of the professional that Marcus appeared to be. Admiral Kovan spent 3 weeks conducting a careful investigation into Marcus Reed's background using resources that went far beyond the standard crew database. His position as fleet commander gave him access to intelligence networks that spanned multiple species and governments. What he discovered confirmed his worst fears and his growing respect for the humans' abilities. The real Marcus Reed had been a lieutenant colonel in the Terran Special Operations Command with a service record that read like a collection of impossible missions. He had been trained in languages and cultures from across the galaxy and specialized in deep cover infiltration of alien military installations. His psychological profile showed exceptional intelligence and adaptability along with the kind of mental toughness required for long-term isolation assignments. Marcus had been declared killed in action during a classified operation in the Outer Rim territories 2 years before he appeared as a refugee seeking work aboard the Stellar Dominion. The official record showed his transport ship had been destroyed by pirates with no survivors, but Admiral Corvin now understood this had been cover for his transition to deep undercover status. The surgical scars on Marcus's neck were exactly what the Admiral had suspected. Biometric implants and rank designations had been carefully removed by skilled military surgeons who specialized in preparing operatives for deep cover assignments. The procedures would have been painful and dangerous, but they were necessary to eliminate any traces of his military identity. His cover story as a refugee from New Haven had been crafted with remarkable attention to detail. The colony had indeed been destroyed by pirates, and there had been genuine refugees scattered across the galaxy seeking new homes. Marcus had assumed the identity of one of these refugees and created a complete background that would stand up to normal scrutiny, but Admiral Corvan's investigation revealed the sophisticated intelligence operation behind Marcus's presence on the ship. The Terran Special Operations Command had identified the Stellar Dominion as a high-value target for intelligence gathering because of its role in Galactic Council military operations. Getting an operative aboard required years of planning and preparation. The Admiral realized that Marcus had been gathering intelligence on far more than just the Stellar Dominion. His position as a janitor had given him access to classified information about fleet movements and weapons capabilities and strategic plans that affected the entire Galactic Council military structure. The information he had gathered over 3 years would be invaluable to human military planners. What impressed Admiral Corvan most was Marcus's operational discipline. In 3 years of gathering intelligence, he had never taken any actions that would compromise his cover or harm the ship and its crew. He had not sabotaged equipment or stolen classified documents or attempted to recruit other humans as intelligence sources. He had simply observed and learned and remembered. The Admiral understood that Marcus's mission was probably to assess whether the Galactic Council posed a threat to human worlds. The humans knew they were considered a minor species by most galactic civilizations, and they wanted to understand the military capabilities of the more advanced species. Marcus's intelligence gathering would help human leaders make informed decisions about their future in galactic politics. Admiral Corvan found himself in an unprecedented situation. He had discovered a spy who had been operating under his nose for 3 years, but who had never actually committed any acts of espionage that would justify arrest or prosecution. Marcus had broken no laws and caused no harm while gathering information that his government had legitimate reasons to want. The Admiral decided that a direct confrontation was necessary, but it would have to be handled with the respect due to a skilled professional. He arranged for Marcus to be assigned to clean his private office during the night shift when they would not be interrupted. The meeting would give both men a chance to speak freely without the presence of other crew members. Marcus arrived at the Admiral's office at the appointed time with his cleaning supplies and usual quiet demeanor. But Admiral Corvin noticed subtle changes in the human's behavior that suggested he was aware something was different. Marcus positioned himself near the door and kept his cleaning cart between himself and the Admiral's desk in a way that would allow quick escape if necessary. Admiral Corvin dismissed his security detail and locked the office door behind them. The sound of the lock engaging caused Marcus to tense slightly, but he continued his cleaning routine without showing obvious alarm. The Admiral moved to his desk and sat down while keeping his hands visible and his posture non-threatening. The two men observed each other in silence for several minutes while Marcus continued cleaning and the Admiral pretended to review reports on his computer. Finally, Admiral Corvin spoke in a calm voice that carried no hint of accusation or anger. He told Marcus that he had noticed the scars on his neck and had conducted an investigation into his background. The Admiral explained that he knew Marcus's true identity and understood the nature of his mission aboard the Stellar Dominion. But he also made it clear that he was not planning to arrest Marcus or expose him to the crew. Marcus stopped cleaning and straightened up to face the Admiral directly. For the first time in 3 years, he dropped the subservient posture of a janitor and stood with the bearing of a military officer. His voice when he spoke was calm and professional without any attempt to deny or deflect the Admiral's accusations. He confirmed that he was indeed Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Reed of the Terran Special Operations Command and that he had been conducting intelligence-gathering operations aboard the Stellar Dominion for 3 years. He explained that his mission was to assess Galactic Council military capabilities and determine whether the Council posed a threat to human worlds. Marcus told the Admiral that he had gathered extensive information about ship designs and weapons systems and tactical procedures, but had never transmitted any intelligence reports off the ship. His orders were to complete his assignment and return to human space with his findings when his cover was no longer sustainable. Admiral Corvin listened to Marcus's explanation with growing respect for the human's honesty and professionalism. The Admiral had expected denials and deception, but instead found himself speaking with a fellow military officer who understood the complexities of duty and honor even in the context of espionage operations. The Admiral revealed that he had been testing Marcus for weeks and had confirmed his suspicions about the human's true nature. But he also explained that Marcus's intelligence gathering had been incomplete because he lacked the broader context of galactic politics and military strategy that would explain the Council's actions. Admiral Corvin made a decision that would change both their lives. He decided to share classified information with Marcus. That would help the human understand the true nature of the threats facing all galactic civilizations. The Admiral believed that cooperation might serve both their interests better than the continued deception that had defined their relationship for 3 years. The silence in Admiral Corvin's office stretched between the two military officers like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Marcus stood with his hands at his sides in a relaxed but ready position that could shift to defensive or offensive action in an instant. Admiral Corvin remained seated behind his desk, but his crystalline body was tense with the energy of someone prepared for any possible outcome. Finally, the Admiral spoke again, and his words carried the weight of classified information that could change everything Marcus thought he knew about the galactic situation. Admiral Corvin told Marcus that the military buildup and weapons development that he had been observing were not preparation for aggressive action against human worlds or any other species. Instead, they were desperate defensive measures against a threat that could destroy all life in the galaxy. The Admiral activated a holographic display that showed star charts of the galaxy's outer rim where the known civilizations ended and the void of unexplored space began. He explained that deep space monitoring stations had detected massive energy signatures moving through the void toward inhabited space. The signatures were too large and too organized to be natural phenomena and too powerful to be the work of any known species. Marcus watched the display with growing understanding as Admiral Corvin explained that these void entities had already consumed several star systems beyond the galactic rim. Long-range sensors showed planets stripped of all life and stars themselves dimmed as if their energy was being harvested by something that existed on a scale beyond normal comprehension. The Galactic Council had been preparing for this threat for 5 years since the first void signatures were detected. Every major species had contributed their best ships and weapons and personnel to create a defensive force that might be able to stop the approaching invasion. The military exercises and weapons testing that Marcus had observed were all part of this preparation. Admiral Corvin showed Marcus classified reports from the few deep space scouts who had survived encounters with void entities. The descriptions were terrifying and barely believable. The entities appeared to be living ships the size of small moons that could absorb energy from any source, including the life force of living beings. They moved through space without any visible means of propulsion, and their weapons could destroy entire fleets with single focused beams. Marcus realized that his intelligence gathering had been missing the most important context possible: the information he had collected about Galactic Council. Military capabilities was accurate, but his interpretation of their purpose had been completely wrong. The Council was not preparing to threaten human worlds, but to defend all galactic civilization from something that made previous conflicts seem like minor disagreements. The Admiral continued his briefing by explaining that the void entities were expected to reach the outer colonies within 2 years and the core worlds within 5 years. Every tactical simulation showed that the combined fleets of all galactic species would be insufficient to stop the invasion without new strategies and weapons that had not yet been developed. Marcus understood that his mission had suddenly become irrelevant in the face of this greater threat. The question was no longer whether the Galactic Council posed a danger to humanity, but whether any species would survive the coming invasion. His intelligence about Council military capabilities could actually be valuable in preparing for the void threat if it was shared with the right people. Admiral Colvan made an offer that Marcus had not expected. The Admiral proposed that Marcus officially join his staff as a strategic consultant with access to all classified information about the void threat and the Council's defensive preparations. Marcus's years of observation had given him unique insights into the ship's operations and crew, capabilities that could be valuable in improving their readiness. The Admiral explained that Marcus's human perspective on warfare might provide solutions that the other species had not considered. Humans had a reputation for adaptability and unconventional thinking that could be exactly what the Council needed to develop new tactics against an enemy. Unlike anything they had ever faced, Marcus considered the offer carefully while weighing his duties to his own government against the larger threat to all galactic civilization. His orders had been to gather intelligence on potential threats to human worlds, but the void entities represented a threat that made such concerns meaningless. If the void consumed the galaxy, there would be no human worlds left to protect. He told Admiral Corvin that he would need to communicate with his superiors in the Terran Special Operations Command before making any commitments. The Admiral agreed to this condition and provided Marcus with access to a secure communication system that would allow him to contact human military headquarters without revealing his location or compromising his cover. The communication with his handlers took place over several days of coded messages that had to be carefully constructed to avoid detection by Council security systems. Marcus explained the situation and requested new orders that would take the void threat into account. The response from his superiors was swift and decisive. The Terran Special Operations Command authorized Marcus to cooperate fully with Admiral Corvin and the Galactic Council in preparing for the void invasion. His new mission was to serve as a liaison between human military forces and the Council, while continuing to gather intelligence that would help both sides prepare for the coming war. Marcus accepted Admiral Corvin's offer and began the process of transitioning from janitor to strategic consultant. The change required careful planning to avoid suspicion from the crew, who had known him as a simple human worker for 3 years. Admiral Corvin crafted a cover story that would explain Marcus's sudden promotion without revealing his true background. The official story was that Marcus had demonstrated exceptional understanding of ship operations during his 3 years of maintenance work and had been selected for advanced training in strategic planning. His refugee background would be used to explain his motivation to protect his new home from the void threat. Admiral Corvan arranged for Marcus to receive a proper uniform and quarters appropriate to his new position while maintaining the fiction that he was still essentially a human worker who had been given additional responsibilities. The transition had to be gradual to avoid questions from crew members who might wonder how a janitor had suddenly become qualified for strategic planning. Marcus's first official briefing as a strategic consultant took place in the same room where he had been cleaning floors just days before. The irony was not lost on him as he sat at the conference table where he had once emptied trash cans and wiped down surfaces. The alien officers who had ignored him for 3 years now listened to his analysis of ship operations and crew readiness. The transformation was remarkable, but it also carried new dangers. Marcus was no longer invisible, and his every word and action would be scrutinized by officers who had not known about his true capabilities. He would have to prove himself worthy of their respect while maintaining operational security about his past and his ongoing connection to human intelligence services. Admiral Kovan watched Marcus's transition with satisfaction and growing confidence that he had made the right decision. The human's insights into ship operations were already proving valuable, and his unique perspective on the void threat was generating new ideas for defensive strategies. The alliance between the Admiral and the spy had become something more important than either had expected when their careful game of observation and deduction had begun. Marcus Reed stood in the Strategic Planning Center wearing the dark blue uniform of a Galactic Council strategic consultant with rank insignia that reflected his new position aboard the Stellar Dominion. The same room where he had once pushed a cleaning cart and emptied trash cans was now his primary workplace, where he analyzed intelligence reports and developed tactical recommendations for the coming war against the void entities. The transformation had taken 2 months of careful planning and gradual introduction to avoid suspicion from the crew. Admiral Corvan had masterfully managed the transition by creating a series of situations where Marcus could demonstrate knowledge and capabilities that seemed to emerge naturally from his years of observation and maintenance work. The alien officers who had previously ignored Marcus now found themselves working alongside a human who understood their ship better than some of them did. His 3 years of cleaning and maintaining every system on the Stellar Dominion had given him intimate knowledge of the vessel's capabilities and weaknesses that proved invaluable in strategic planning. Marcus's first major contribution came when he identified a critical vulnerability in the ship's defensive systems that had been overlooked by the original designers. The energy conduits that powered the shield generators were routed through sections of the ship that would be difficult to protect during combat. Marcus suggested rerouting the conduits through more secure areas and adding backup systems that would prevent total shield failure. The engineering staff initially resisted the suggestion because it would require significant modifications to the ship's infrastructure. But when Marcus explained exactly how the current routing could be exploited by enemy fire, the engineers realized he was right. The modifications were completed within a week, and similar changes were made to other ships in the fleet. Admiral Corvan arranged for Marcus to participate in tactical simulations where the fleet practiced fighting against void entities based on the limited intelligence available from deep space scouts. Marcus's human perspective on warfare provided insights that the alien officers had not considered. Where the aliens focused on direct confrontation and overwhelming firepower, Marcus suggested hit-and-run tactics and psychological warfare. The void entities appeared to be intelligent, but their intelligence was unlike anything the galaxy had encountered before. Marcus proposed that they might be vulnerable to confusion and misdirection tactics that played on assumptions about how civilized species would behave. His suggestions led to the development of new battle plans that emphasized deception and unpredictability. Marcus's analysis of crew behavior patterns also proved valuable in improving the ship's operational efficiency. His years of observation had shown him how different alien species worked together and where communication problems occurred. He identified bottlenecks in the command structure and suggested changes that improved response times during emergency drills. The alien officers gradually overcame their initial skepticism about taking advice from a human. Marcus's recommendations consistently proved effective, and his understanding of the ship's systems was clearly superior to what anyone had expected from a former janitor. His quiet competence and professional demeanor earned him respect from crew members who had previously dismissed him as irrelevant. Captain Theron, the Vorthak aide who had accompanied Admiral Kovan during the inspection that led to Marcus's discovery, became one of his strongest supporters. The crystalline officer had initially been suspicious of the human's sudden promotion, but working with Marcus convinced him that the human's insights were genuinely valuable. The ship's chief engineer commander, Valdris, was a Threnari who had designed many of the systems that Marcus now helped optimize. The insectoid officer was impressed by Marcus's technical knowledge and his ability to see problems from perspectives that the original designers had missed. Valdris began consulting Marcus on modifications to other ships in the fleet. Dr. Nexon, the Nebulan chief medical officer, found Marcus's observations about crew health and stress patterns useful in developing new protocols for maintaining combat readiness during long deployments. The gaseous alien had initially been skeptical about human understanding of alien physiology, but Marcus's data was too accurate to ignore. The integration of Marcus into the command structure was so successful that Admiral Corvin decided to expand his role further. The Admiral arranged for Marcus to participate in fleet-wide strategic planning sessions where representatives from multiple ships coordinated their preparations for the Void invasion. Marcus's reputation as a strategic consultant began to spread beyond the Stellar Dominion to other ships in the fleet. His unique background and perspective made him a valuable resource for commanders who were struggling to adapt traditional military doctrine to the unprecedented threat of the Void entities. The first real test of Marcus's new role came when long-range sensors detected a Void entity approaching the outer colonies ahead of schedule. The entity was smaller than the massive ships that had been reported from deep space, but it was still larger than any vessel in the Galactic Council fleet. Admiral Corvan's ship was part of a task force assigned to intercept and study the entity. Marcus worked with the tactical team to develop a plan that would allow the fleet to gather intelligence about Void capabilities while avoiding direct confrontation that could result in heavy losses. His suggestions emphasized stealth and long-range observation rather than the aggressive approach that some officers favored. The encounter with the Void entity provided crucial intelligence about enemy capabilities and tactics. Marcus's analysis of the entity's behavior patterns revealed weaknesses that could be exploited in future engagements. His recommendations for fleet positioning and attack vectors were incorporated into the standard tactical doctrine for fighting Void entities. The success of the mission established Marcus as a key figure in the fleet's preparation for the larger invasion. His transformation from invisible janitor to respected strategic consultant was complete, and his value to the war effort was undeniable. The aliens who had once ignored him now sought his advice on critical decisions that could determine the fate of galactic civilization. Admiral Corvin reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought Marcus from the shadows of ship maintenance to the center of military planning. The Admiral's decision to confront Marcus rather than simply arrest him had created an alliance that benefited both sides and strengthened the galaxy's defenses against the Void threat. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Stellar Dominion watching the stars scroll past as the fleet moved toward its next engagement with Void forces. 3 years ago he had been a spy gathering intelligence on potential enemies. Now he was a trusted advisor helping to coordinate the defense of all galactic civilization against an enemy that threatened to consume everything. The human who had once been invisible had become indispensable, and his story would be remembered as an example of how cooperation between species could overcome the prejudices and assumptions that had once divided them. Marcus Reed had proven that sometimes the most valuable asset was not advanced technology or superior firepower, but simply the ability to see problems from a different perspective and find solutions that others had missed. The Void entities would discover that underestimating human capabilities was a mistake that could cost them everything.